Well, hello everybody. So I am Max Bratt. I lead our business development team. I get to work specifically with companies, service providers, and other accounts that are based on the East Coast. I am based here in Boston. About half of LSN is in Boston. The rest of us are scattered everywhere.
Hello, everyone. My name is Karen Dio. I am the VP of Product at Life Science Nation. So that means that I work on any new product development as well as being in charge of our educational content at LSN. And very happy to be here.
Yeah. And education includes all of these webinars. However, as I'm sure a lot of you know, LSN is quite multifaceted. So we at the core of it, we help early stage companies connect with investors and strategic licensing partners. We do that in a variety of ways. So at the core, we are really a data company, right? We have, throughout the 13 years that we've existed, created a list of over 3,500 different investors and licensing partners, which spans across 10 different types of investors, right? So everything from hedge funds, private equity, VCs, strategics, pharma, medtech, angels, family offices, you name it. We've curated all of that information primarily through one-on-one interviews into our investor database. And through that, we've also been able to build out what we seem to be most well known for nowadays is the Resi conference. We do Resi 5 times a year globally. And the reason for that is because our entire approach to fundraising is that it is a numbers game. And so if you are a fundraising executive, whether you're raising seed, Series A, Series B, or beyond, it all comes down to getting a list of investors, targeting that list, and speaking to as many of them as you can. And so if you're a fundraising company and you can follow us around to our largest event, we typically start JP Morgan in January. We will then be in Portugal doing Resi Lisbon in March. We'll be doing Resi San Diego in June, Resi Boston as part of Boston Biotech Week, and then we will finish our year in London. And so if you can follow us around in these events, you've now had within the next 6 months, you've done 80 to 100 investor meetings, which is what it takes to be successful. And throughout all of these 13 years and the tens of thousands of messages, interactions between investor and entrepreneur that we've seen, we've also curated our LSN Labs, which is our educational component. And so, Karen, you know that the ins and outs of LSN Labs, so I'll let you talk about both that as well as our next phase publications.
Absolutely. Yeah. So with LSN Labs, we have a few components. So the education classes, which we have 12 that are recorded and available for subscription online. We do seminars and workshops and programs that we coordinate with regional organizations and tech hubs. We also have a program where we developed an AI agent that does an assessment of companies, and that's just a questionnaire, a relatively quick questionnaire that you fill out and post your materials, and we send you a free assessment report. And we also have a new product that we call BD Assist, which is for companies that are really looking to schedule meetings but don't have the capacity to do it in-house, where so we have a system set up where we will manage your outreach and schedule your meetings for you. Apart from that, we have publications. We have a newsletter that goes out once a week. And we also have this book, The Life Science Executives Fundraising Manifesto, written by our CEO, Dennis Ford. And if you are interested in reading that book, we can offer you a PDF version for free. You can reach out to us either through the chat or after the session, and we will send that to you.
Yeah. And some housekeeping items. Like Karen said, yes, we will send you a copy of the ebook for free. We will send that out to everyone following this session. We will also send out the link to that AI agent that we had kind of briefly discussed. And if you're a company in there, it takes 15 minutes to fill it out. It is a fundraising readiness assessment. You go in, you provide details, your executive summary, your pitch deck, all of that. And it will essentially spit out where we think you are in your fundraising readiness. It will revise your tagline, your elevator pitch, and give you just a third party perspective. And a lot of it, it's not perfect, but it's going to be 90% better than what most people have. And you can take and pull from that as you wish. There's certainly going to be certain portions of that report that if you want to go ahead and pull into your own pitch, or even pull directly into your materials, we of course welcome that, and we invite it because it really is a powerful tool. So we'll
Yeah.
send that out following this as well.
Yeah, we've had investors tell us that the summary provided by the AI agent is a much better summary than they've gotten from reviewing a company's materials for the same pitch deck that they reviewed themselves. And so it's a very powerful tool.
Yeah. And that's partially because, well, we built it to be, right? So we
Yeah.
built it through the 13 years of experience that we have. We also collaborated with Mass Medical Angels, who is an angel group out of Cambridge, Massachusetts, and it's comprised of, I think, 80 plus Harvard, MIT PhDs that have seasoned experience as angel investors, and they gave us a list of questions that they want to see compiled into how they essentially look at a company, because when they first look at a company, they run through the checklist of how do I de-risk this company? And so by being able to clearly present that information, it really streamlines and kind of expedites the process of an investor deciding, do I want to meet with this company or do I not want to meet with this company? Because part of fundraising is making that as easy as possible for the investor. It is no shocker to anybody out there that investors are sometimes drowning in deal flow. The issue with that is so much of the incoming deal flow they receive is completely unqualified. And so if you are a company and you are able to show that you've done your homework and show that you're aligned with their thesis on the sets of we are a match technology, indication, modality, check size, that's the biggest hurdle in getting your first meeting. And so if you can and do that in a way that clearly shows your narrative, it makes it a lot easier. Um, and one more thing before we really get started is this webinar will also be recorded. So Karen and I are recording this. We will, along with both the AI assessment and the book, send out the video recording of the webinar. So if you have any colleagues that may have missed a portion of it, missed all of it, or that you just want to send it around to, do not panic. We will send you the recording. And so, as I had mentioned earlier, this specific webinar is really going to focus on column number 2 here, the Resi conference. At Resi, it is very partnering focused, meaning that all of the attendees get in, they get access to the partnering portal, where you can go in and filter it down based off of a lot of the criteria that I just mentioned, but check size, investor type, modality, interest, indication interest, and find those that are actually a fit for your product and stage of development, and then book 30-minute meetings, and do the kind of speed dating style where you can then go around and fill your day with qualified investor meetings. But outside of just partnering, we offer a wide range of other programming. So we have investor panels. We have a lineup both for Resi London, which is going to be happening December 4th, as well as Resi JP Morgan, which is January 12th and 13th. We have full programs of expert investor panels, as well as entrepreneurial education workshops. And then lastly is the Innovators Pitch Challenge. And that is our pitch session. So the pitch session, I will dive into maybe a little bit more as we progress. But again, whether it is our pitch session or any pitch session, a lot of the tips that Karen and I share today will be applicable. So we'll start by just going through an overview of how do you prepare to pitch, and then we'll dive into, in our opinion, what we've seen makes a good presentation. And Karen, I know I speak for myself. We have seen a lot. We've seen a lot of great presentations, and we've seen a lot of not so great presentations.
Yes.
And so we know what investors want to see primarily. And so we're going to be trying to share the tips on how to do that. And a big component of that is not just the actual presentation itself, but how do you prepare for questions? And so we'll close with that, preparing for questions. So tip number 1, before you even pitch, is to know your audience. Different investors require different messaging. That is primarily true based off the investor type, right? So I had mentioned it earlier, there are 10 different types of investors. A lot of fundraising executives, when they first spin out of tech transfer and start to raise around, they maybe move on from bootstrapping and friends and family, and they're now looking for more of an equity-based investor in their first institutional round. They go and they Google best life science investors. And what they find is they're going to get a big list of some of the biggest names out there. However, a lot of these investors and these investor types are writing checks for 30, 40, 50 million. And if you're raising 10 to 15, 15 to 20, or even 1 to 5, um, the investor that you may need to be speaking with could very easily be a group that you've never heard of before. And so if you limit yourself to just the big name VCs, you're going to rule out a lot of potential investors that are really a good fit. And so the easiest way to do that is we recommend not closing yourself only to VCs. Yes, VCs are a great option. And in fact, they actually come in a variety of different types of VCs, right? So you have late stage VCs who I just kind of mentioned, but they write bigger checks. Typically, they look for phase three growth and manufacturing capital, already a de-risked asset. Um, then there's the middle stage guys who their thesis is that they'll write a medium-sized check, oftentimes for late stage phase one, phase 2B, still de-risked, and they want to see a lot of data. But then there's this whole other category of early stage venture capital, and their thesis is to take a relatively smaller check size and distribute it to a number of companies. And these are the groups that are open to preclinical. They're open to being 18 months out of IND, at least on the biotech side. On the medtech and the diagnostic side, they're open to pre-proof of concept. They're open to early stage. And for many of the companies that are either attending Resi or thinking about attending Resi who may live in this area, um, these are the types of VCs to target. Of course, there's other investor types, right? Like angels, family offices that are more notably early stage. Um, but you even see strategic groups. Most big pharma, most big med tech have a separate corporate venture arm where their thesis is to invest in strategic opportunities. And because of that, it's good to know the audience in the sense that if you're going to be pitching to a strategic investor, know roughly what they're looking for. If they're really into cardio or oncology, that's important to know because that will also dictate the way that their strategic arm invests. Karen,
Sometimes.
yeah.
Yeah, no, so I mean, this is especially true when you're meeting investors one-on-one. One of the things that we try to do in our pitch sessions is when we're selecting judges for the Q&A, we group companies based on sector so that we can ensure that investors can ask, relevant questions for the company that's pitching. You're not always going to know if you know ahead of time who's on a Q&A panel for a pitch that you're doing, look them up, see what their background is also. But also think about the fact in terms of knowing your audience, be aware that you're not doing a scientific pitch. You're doing an investor pitch. So don't be overly technical, because when you're pitching to a panel of investors, inevitably there's probably going to be at least one person in the audience who has a financial background and not a scientific background. So you don't want to make a pitch that they don't understand.
Hmm. That's exactly right. If anybody didn't write that down, please do. It happens more than it doesn't. A lot of
Yeah.
times companies are so proud of the data that they've curated and they just want to show data. There is a time and a place for that, right? Investors typically go through a checklist, like I'd said earlier, but oftentimes the first stage is this the type of company that I want to pass on to the scientific expert within my own firm? And that means that the person who's initially reviewing it is very rarely the scientific expert. Um, and so therefore you don't need to dive into depth. Obviously, it's important to show what is the technology at a high level, what is the differentiation point, and if you have data that shows it either works or it doesn't work, include that, right? Data is super important, but don't spend too much time covering it
Yeah.
in the first pitch.
Yes.
And so Karen, I mentioned it earlier, but the way that we do our Innovators Pitch Challenge, everyone does it differently. The way that we choose to do it is we do a 6-minute pitch followed by 7 minutes of Q&A. And the reason why we put such a big emphasis on that Q&A session is because, like Karen had mentioned, we spend a lot of time formulating the judging panel. And so what we do is we will typically group in companies into sessions of 4 companies per session. We look at their technology, we look at their modality, we look at their indication, and we then compile a judging panel of between 4 to 6 sector-specific investor judges. Sector-specific meaning that they represent a fund and a thesis that invests into that area. And it may seem brutally obvious that that would be the case, but we've been to a number of events, and oftentimes at some, I'm not going to name names, but other pitch events, companies end up pitching to an empty room. And it's a shame because at Resi, we have anywhere from 4 to 700 investors. Resi JPM will have 750 investors there. And it spans a wide variety. It's not just biotech, it's devices, diagnostics, digital, and a wide variety of indications as well. And so by putting you in front of investors that are in your area, that's a phenomenal opportunity to essentially have your first meeting.
And also don't forget, a pitch is in many instances your first impression in front of an investor. So one of the things, knowing the format of any pitch you're doing is crucial. How long do you have? Practice so that your pitch is tailored to that time, because either going too fast or taking too long, it doesn't make a good impression. So practice, 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 and make sure you know that you have a good flow for the time of your pitch. And actually, there's a great tool in PowerPoint to help you with this. So if you're in PowerPoint and you hit the slideshow tab, there's a rehearse with coach button there. And it will time you and also give you data on if you're using too many fillers, like how your pitch is, if you're in a monotone, if you're speaking too fast or too slow, all kinds of data that you can help you rehearse your pitch and make it sound good. So just take the time to go over it with a stopwatch and make sure that you're in the correct time frame.
Mhm. And so to further dive into IPC at Resi, again, it is in addition to the partnering. So every company who signs up for the pitch package, they're able to bring 2 delegates from their company. They get full access to the in-person partnering as well as all of the virtual partnering. Resi London will have 2 days of virtual partnering. Resi JP Morgan will have 3 days of virtual partnering that follow the event. But it is a phenomenal opportunity on top of the partnering to get increased visibility. We promote you within our social media, within the program guide, and all of the other sources that we can to really get your company and your company name in front of all of the attending investors. Because what we see is that while, yes, we put together the investor panel, because we lay it out in a session, we promote, oh, here is the digital health session, or here is the oncology therapeutic session. Um, Other investors who are interested in that area join the room. So it's not just the panel of judges. Typically, we guarantee the 4 to 6, but what we see is that there's at least 10 other investors that will come and sit in on that room because it's an area that they choose to invest in. So
Yeah.
outside,
Oh,
oh,
sorry.
I was gonna say outside of just the actual presentation, there's a number of things that come with the pitch package additionally, right? So every competing company will also get access to a table and a poster space in the main conference foyer. And that is important because it's one additional source of investor leads. Investors will typically go through the posters and kind of look at the poster sessions. And that's one of the reasons why we recommend bringing 2 people and why the package includes 2. That way, one person can be doing the partnering meetings, doing the pitch, and then the second colleague can be manning that poster and stopping by all of the investors that are walking by. And what's special about Resi is every investor wears a red badge, which means it's really easy to see who is and who is not an investor. And because we have close to a 1-to-1 ratio of entrepreneur to investor, it actually creates somewhat of an informal environment in a good way. And what I mean by that is you can actually network and take ad hoc meetings and talk. And if you're a company there to fundraise and you see someone with a red badge walking by and you haven't met them, stick your hand out and say, "Hi, I'm on behalf of this company. Where do you invest?" Because with 700 investors at JPM and 200 at London, there's going to be a lot there that invest in your area, especially because at the early stage they can be opportunistic. So that poster session is just another phenomenal opportunity to actually get in front of investors.
Yeah, and one other thing to note, for Resi at least, is that the IPC is actually a competition as well. So each attendee is given Resi cash. It's kind of like Monopoly money. And the goal is to get attendees to invest in your company based on the strength of your pitch. Now, one of our biggest mantras is that fundraising is a numbers game. And the goal of doing it this way, essentially it's gamification. We want you to get out there and talk to as many people as you can. And so by encouraging you to go out, to talk to people, to get them to invest in you, we've seen that the companies that are the most outgoing and put in the most effort to talk to as many people as possible inevitably end up winning the IPC because they collect the most Resi cash. And those are also the ones that a lot of times end up with the most ad hoc meetings that can end up leading somewhere. And so it's a great way to push yourself to make as many connections as you can. Um, so really, it's a great way to really encourage yourself to make an effort to get out there as much as possible. Um,
And
yep, go ahead.
I was gonna say what Karen says, we mean it, right? We have seen companies go out and they find every investor out there and they say, come to my poster, give me your Resi cash, please, and let me tell you about what we do. And they ask for it. And we've had companies say, do you condemn that? Do you think that's fair? Absolutely. That's how you succeed in fundraising is you have to go out, talk to investors, ask them for your Resi cash. Um, that typically means that not only, like Karen said, are you going to get a good number of ad hoc meetings, but you're going to do well in the competition. And there are prizes associated with it. So we do a first, second, and third place prize. First place gets free tickets to three upcoming Resi conferences, second place to two, and then third place to one.
Yeah, and it's a great way just to get yourself out there. One other thing, so we talk about preparing for your pitch and 5 minutes, whatever the session is. For us, it's 6 minutes. But one other thing is to think about is what we call the tagline, which is 5 to 7 words. That is a great way to pitch yourself in a single sentence. So that's something that's great to have for you for when you're going up to introduce yourself to companies. It's a great way to give the core of what your company does with just a quick introduction when you're talking to people and saying, hi, I do this, this, and this. And I'd be interested to talk more about it if you would want to come to my poster. I'm really looking to get people to invest their Resi cash in me. So if you can even use that, it's a great way to work on your messaging in that way.
Yeah.
And we do make sure that you get feedback. So the investors that do the Q&A, they will be filling out feedback forms, and we do make sure that you get them after the session, as well as connecting you to the investors that were on your Q&A panel.
hmm one tip that I'm surprised that I don't see more frequently, it seems obvious to me, but when you go up to pitch at the actual pitch component, give the judges your business card. Um, so many times I've seen a company pitch, they do a great job pitching, they get great questions and really high quality engagement from the judges, and then they go back and they leave the room. And yes, I'm sure that many of them will either meet them through partnering or find them walking around the conference later. But just make it easy on yourself. Give the judges your business card. I don't think it hurts at all.
Make it easy on them.
Yeah.
That's really what it's about. Make it easy on them. Yeah.
Perfect.
Just a quick thing. We had a question come in from the Q&A about, do we have any stats on how many companies get funding as a direct result of their Resi pitches? It's hard to say because it's all combined between Resi, the IPC, and things like that. But we did recently release a case study looking into companies that have reported to us that they have been successful, and it is a lot. And we don't even have the full results because not everyone tells us. We help with the introductions, but the funding usually happens, probably a year down the road. So they don't necessarily always remember to tell us or remember where they met them the first time. So
Yeah. So to maybe explain what Karen said a little bit more too is we have been doing this a long time, and throughout that time, so many companies come up and they say, "Oh, I got funding through Resi," or "Oh, my pitch led to funding." And so we've kept a list. It was about 90 companies that had publicly came to us and disclosed that information to us. And so we kept a list of those, and we just looked and compiled that list and saw that of those 90 companies, we helped them raise $1.3 billion. And while the majority of the actual capital, I think it was around 80% of that capital is associated with biotech, the rest, devices, diagnostics, and digital. What was really interesting was when you look at the number of deals of those 90 companies, it was pretty evenly spread throughout all the different sectors. So I think about 30 of the 90 deals were biotech, 25 were devices, and then 20 were diagnostics and digital and so forth, which goes to show that obviously biotech, they have longer R&D cycles, clinical trials are very expensive, and so they gather a lot of the actual capital, but number of deals is spread almost evenly throughout the board.
yeah, and there was also another question of how early is too early for applying to pitch. I would say it really depends on when you're looking to start building relationships for fundraising. Because that's when you should start thinking about pitching.
Yeah.
Because it's a
And
great way to get your name out there.
And notice that Karen said when you are starting to think about building relationships for fundraising and not when you're looking to close around. Fundraising takes 9 to 18 months at a minimum. And because of that, the easiest time to fundraise is when you have runway to do it. Don't wait until you're almost out of runway. Don't wait until it's too late to fundraise. I used to say that it's never too early to start fundraising. Um, Now I'll say if you have a company and you have a pitch deck and executive summary, that's the time. And if you don't, take an afternoon to make it, right? Um, that goes more into the sense of being prepared to pitch than it does when should I start fundraising. Um, but like we say, if you're really looking to start building relationships and it takes a long time to do so, um, it's the right time.
Yeah, we have a company that is going to be pitching at JPM. They literally just closed their Series A round, and they're not going to be fundraising for 2 years, but they want to start now with building those relationships for their Series B because they know how much effort it takes and how long it takes to build those relationships, and they don't want to be left with not enough time.
Yeah.
So, that's the kind of mentality that you want. You don't want to think about I'm only pitching when I'm actively fundraising. You want to be pitching and getting your name out there when you know you're going to need to be fundraising sometime in the near future because it takes time to build these relationships.
Yeah, and one of the reasons for that too is if you're an early stage company that's fundraising, I would be willing to bet that the number one objection you get when you speak with an investor who isn't interested is they're going to say, "Oh, we are interested, but you're just too early. We need to see more data. We need to see more milestones." And if you can start early and build relationships with investors while you're hitting milestones, that shows them that you're doing what you say you're doing, you're creating value. And that way, if they've known you for a year, it makes it a lot easier for them to invest in you when you are fundraising.
Yeah.
And so I jumped ahead prematurely on the slides here, but we're on the next slide,
Yep.
which is what do you actually cover in your pitch? And we know that 6 minutes is fast, right? 6 minutes is not supposed to be a first meeting. We call it the movie trailer and not the movie. So you're supposed to cover a variety of things at a very high level. Cover the unmet need, cover the technology, the differentiation. Here it also has listed cover the competition. One of the biggest red flags we see is when a company goes up there and they say, I have no competition, nobody's in my space, nobody's doing what I'm doing. It's not true. Uh,
It's not.
just because you have competition does not mean that they're replicating you. You are differentiated if you can show how you're differentiated and then show that, oh, there are other people in my space. We're better. We're doing this differently. That just shows that you have a good understanding of the ecosystem. which is an extremely attractive thing for investors to see.
Yeah, and I would also add, you're not going to be able to cover everything. So pick and choose what it is about your company that makes it unique. Is it the management team? Is it KOLs that are involved? Funding that you've achieved? You know, you'll have to practice and see how much you can put in and how much you cannot. But use it. The main thing that I want to highlight that you absolutely have to cover in your pitch is what makes you unique. Why should they invest in you? How do you stand out? And how are you solving this problem in a way that no one else does? Because that's really the big takeaway that you need them to have. Because, there are tons of good technologies out there. Not all of them are going to be successful in market for one reason or another. So you need to really point out what it is about you that will make you successful.
Mhm. And one of the tips that I've seen work really well is if there's something that you touch at a high level, but maybe you don't spend as much time going into depth on, and you have an appendix slide, and you're almost expecting a question on it, work that into the appendix. In reality, the slides that you share for a 6-minute presentation are probably going to be 8 to 10 slides total. Don't go up there with a 40-page deck. Have 8 to 10 really good slides, but you could have a big back end appendix where if you then get asked a question that maybe you brought up but you didn't get to explain in detail, you can flip a few slides past the actual presentation and show more data. We've seen that work really well.
Yeah.
And the last bullet here is keep the time limit in mind. Uh, Karen mentioned this earlier. We will be the bad guys. I'm sorry. We will probably be the bad guys and cut you off. Not if you're a second over, we'll let you finish your sentence. But we do try to keep it pretty close to the 6 minutes. And if you do go slightly over, it'll eat into your Q&A time.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
and
and go ahead.
I was gonna say, and also just at the high level, it looks good to go up there and do a polished presentation.
You don't want to look unprepared. That is not a good look.
Yeah. And so this brings us to the actual messaging tips. So when you get up there and you're presenting, how do you present it and describe your technology and your company in a way that's compelling, audibly, right? Number one tip is going to be clearly describe the technology. That is the basis of your company and that is the foundation of what you're pitching. Um, don't go in there and we have an example here. Don't be vague. Don't say my company has a proprietary treatment for many critical illnesses. Be very clear and describe exactly where you are. So we have an IND ready. Describe your modality. It's a small molecule, and describe your indication. Here, breast cancer. And then how are you doing it? What is the magic? What is the secret? Um, Activating natural killer cells. So you see that the first line that I read, my company has a proprietary treatment for many critical illnesses. If I were just to share that, you would have no idea what the company is really doing. But the second line, it is very clear, and an investor reading it will immediately know whether or not that is, or again, is not a company that they want to choose to meet with.
And this is actually, and one thing I will say about this is one of the most challenging parts of it, of being descriptive, but not too technical. Because you want people to be able to understand. So you don't want to go so in depth where you're talking about the pathways that you're using and things like that, because that's going to end up going over anyone who's not a scientist. It's probably going to go over their head. So think about it of you have a family member. I always think of if I were explaining it to my dad, who's in his 70s and has never taken a biology class in his life. If I can explain it to my dad in such a way that he understands it, that's what I've done. Well, so he understands the core of the technology without me having to delve too deep into the scientific. So that's how you want to approach it. Um, We end up talking to a lot of scientist entrepreneurs. I'll be in meetings with them with Dennis, our CEO, and they'll start describing their technology, and Dennis has to stop them, and he looks at me and he asks me to translate it. So you don't want to put the investors in that position. And it's really hard, but if you practice at it, it will become second nature.
Yeah. And then the bottom half of this slide, I think we've already touched on, but be realistic with your statements. Um, One of the places where companies typically go wrong here is again with competition. Um, the investor is going to know the industry and they're going to know the market. If you go up there and you say we have no competition, they could probably name two companies that are differentiated from you, but still in line as competition. And so go up there and be realistic, show that you have just as good, if not a better understanding of the ecosystem than the investor does. You are the expert in it, it's your company. Show that you have a good understanding of where your company fits within it.
Yeah, or for example, we once talked to a company that told us, "Oh, I have something that will a molecule that will treat any infectious disease." Huge waving red flag. That's not going to happen. So you definitely want, and investors will be a lot more skeptical of you if you make overarching statements like that.
Yeah.
So explaining your current company status in detail. So this kind of follows along with the first point, but goes beyond just explaining the technology. And in a lot of instances, you're like, well, I don't have a lot of time. And we understand that, but there are ways that you can make statements not that much longer, but a lot more detailed. So don't just say the CEO is an experienced entrepreneur. Give a few words about years of experience, companies they've worked for, or whatever it may be, or years that they've spent working on the technology. Whatever it may be, just throw in a few extra seconds in there to make it more detailed. If you're too vague, it almost looks like there's something that you're trying to hide.
Yeah. And although we used the example here of a management team and specifically a CEO, the same concept is true to all other aspects of your company. One of the other things that we see frequently is companies when they're talking about their IP. Let's say that they have minimal IP in place. They avoid the topic, and rather than saying, "Oh, we are filing for IP, we're expecting to hear back on XYZ," they just won't bring it up. And the same goes with data. Show that even if you, I mean, you're an early stage company, it's expected that you are early stage. What's more important is to show that you have strategic vision for growth.
So summarizing your near-term and long-term strategy, investors want to know that you thought things out, that you have a strategy in place. They know you're not going to have all of the answers. The earlier you are, especially, that will be true, but that you've thought about talking to the FDA, that you've thought about other regulatory things that you need to align, that you've thought about reimbursement if that's relevant, that you thought about how you're going to penetrate the market. All of these things are crucial. And they know you're not going to have all the answers. They don't expect you to, but they expect you to have a strategy in place to address it that should be well thought out. Or even say, we will engage such and such an expert when we reach such and such a stage when it becomes more relevant, that you've at least thought about the holes that you have and that you're going to fill them at a relevant time. It's all part in demonstrating that, you know what you need to know, even if you don't know it now.
Exactly. And messaging tip number four is to provide enough information, but don't go overboard. I should have probably mentioned this earlier, but in the actual IPC application, it will ask you to submit your executive summary and your pitch deck. This is different than the pitch deck is different than what you're actually going to be presenting on the screen. One of the reasons why we ask for your materials ahead of time is because we will actually send it to the judge panel before your pitch ever even starts. That way, they can go through and they're going to know what to expect at a high level. They're going to be semi-familiar with your company, your technology, with your differentiation. And that way again, you're not expected to go into as much detail as you may want to. And it's gonna complement it well. So we say that those materials that are submitted as part of the application really do complete the application, because the investors, they know what they're, gonna hear.
And they'll be ready with relevant questions.
Exactly. And speaking of relevant questions, relevant questions is one of the most important parts of the pitch, right? Again, 6 minutes is quick. You're not going to be able to share everything. Um, but investors are going to know what they want to hear more of. Um, Typically, it ranges on a variety of topics, but what we see most frequently are questions on the technology, right? Not just how does it work, but also what need does it meet? If you're a digital health company, how do you fit into a physician's current workflow? Um, and then if an investor is a scientific expert on that specific thing, maybe then they choose to ask for more data, ask to see results of maybe a phase 1 clinical trial. And there, again, I recommend having it in some sort of appendix slide if you want to show a big chart. That's a great way to bring it up. Another question category that we typically see is market and competition. Almost every company, they will go up there and they'll have the slide of here's my TAM, SAM, SOM, and show it. Um, but the Q&A portion is a good opportunity to then go more into depth, right? What are maybe some of the barriers to entry you expect as you move from MVP into maybe a pilot or something? What is some feedback you've heard if you're already piloting? Things of that nature that, again, this is a good opportunity to go into more depth.
Also, as we mentioned, they might ask questions about regulatory and reimbursement strategies. If you have a specific fundraising plan or path to exit, if you're planning to acquisition, in-house sales, IPO, what point any of those will hit. Management team, they might ask more about the key people, or they might ask if there are any KOLs that are involved. And it's fine to say and to answer, I don't know, if you don't know. It is better to say that than to try to make up an answer, because investors will be able to tell. And so you can just say, that's a great point. I need to look into it, or I'm not 100% certain, but based on what I've seen, I think it's this, this, and this. If you can give a well-reasoned answer. Clearly, you don't want to say I don't know to every single answer, but it's fine to not know the answer to all of the questions.
Yeah.
And it's also crucial, like if you're doing multiple pitch events, keep in mind what questions you get asked from event to event. If you're getting asked the same question every single time, that's probably an indication that it's something that it's critical for you to add to your pitch because all of the investors care about it. So look at the questions that you get asked and try to figure out if it's what it means about your messaging.
Yeah, and that's true of traditional pitch sessions like the Innovators Pitch Challenge, as well as the partnering meetings. If you go in there and you continuously hear the same questions, like Aaron said, it's probably a good indication that it's something that you should address. And moving on to keep in mind that these are investors, so we'll always come back to business questions. And so the one thing that I want to maybe dive a little bit more into is path to exit. Um, this is probably one that you're going to not know the answer to. You say, "Oh, I'm an early stage company. I'm years away from an exit." So if they ask, "How do you plan on exiting?" I don't know is an acceptable answer, but what's a much better answer is, I don't know, but looking at the market, what we've seen is similar companies have exited in this path to this pharma for this amount of money. We also have the potential to license and again, just show that you have an understanding of the viable routes, right? No one's expecting you to say, "Oh, I already have a term sheet for an exit." What they're expecting you to say is, here are potential routes that we could develop. Perfect. And so we've saved a few minutes for some questions. If there's anybody out there that has a question, whether it is on the logistics of how do I sign up to compete in the IPC, maybe if you are already signed up and you have questions on Resi, or if you have any general questions that Karen and I can answer, we are more than happy to do so.
Yeah, feel free to either use the chat or the Q&A. Here we go. How do you position grant um, grant funds as part of an overall financial ask? For example, entire project needs 5 million, but you are actively applying for 2 million in grants and need the rest in venture. Do you ask for the entire amount for the investors in case grants do not come through? I would put in there that you are raising 5 million, but put in parentheses that you are seeking 2 million in grants so that they know that you're going to be raising anywhere from 3 to 5 million, depending on the outcome of the grants. Investors love to see non-dilutive funding
Yeah.
because it is a great indication of an alternate source of evaluation.
Yeah, what we recommend presenting is present the round size. So in this case, we're raising 5 million. If you have 5 million as a total ask, there's 2 million in potential grant funding, and you even want to say, oh, we've spoken with other investors. We think we have around 1 million additionally soft circled. That's one route of showing where you stand in the fundraise. And then, of course, doing that with non-dilutive funding is a great option. And it's also really beneficial depending on where your company may be based. If there's any incentive programs, I know a lot of state governments will issue some sort of matching program specifically to angel investors. Um, and if there's something like that in where you are located, that's also really important to mention. So if you say, oh, I'm raising 5 million total, my state has a matching program up to 500K, and show where a potential ticket, a potential check could fit within the round. You don't need to ask for, oh, I need this amount in a check. That will come in negotiation once you're kind of negotiating a term sheet.
And it's not like you're going to pitch and then walk away with a check anyway. So there's going to be time to provide them with all of the necessary information as time goes on.
And so I will come back here and put Karen and I's emails back up on the screen. If there's a question that you maybe think of in an hour and you wish you would have asked it, here are emails. Please do ask it. Feel free to email either Karen and I with any of your questions. Someone, whether it is us directly or someone else on our team, will get back to you. And again, we will send all the stuff we said we would. We'll send a copy of the ebook, we'll send the AI assessment, and we'll send the webinar recording.
Any other questions?
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for joining. I hope that we see all of you at one of our upcoming events. Again, Resi London will be taking place December 4th, and then Resi JP Morgan will be January 12th and 13th in San Francisco. So we hope to see everyone there, and we look forward to it.
Thank you, everyone.